Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. We're breaking things down here. We talk Steelers offense. We talk Steelers defense. Let's talk Steelers special teams and specifically Chris Boswell, because this has been kind of unique this year for some of the struggles that he's had. Missed 2 field goals in this game, and all game long I was like, man, like the 52-yarder, I felt like Mike Tomlin could have gone for instead of putting him in that situation after he missed the first kick. But the first kick, I'm like, Chris Boswell's been automatic, and he's been automatic in crazier conditions than that game. You know, the snow game in Buffalo back in 2016, and a lot of crazy situations. Is something wrong with Boswell, or is he just coming back from that injury and just maybe needed to get back into his groove, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he dealt with that injury that kept him out for about a month or so. And if you watch him, Chris, it doesn't look like he's following through like he normally would. So maybe that groin is still bothering him a bit. I mean, to me, if you're the Steelers, maybe you just go with Matthew Wright for the rest of that season, and you just keep him on the shelf. It's probably not going to matter. If you do remember, Boswell had an injury back in 2018. He missed that Saints game, correct? The one that was so costly to them not making the playoffs that year.
Missed, I think it was multiple field goals against the Raiders in that year too, especially a potential game winner that they would have had that would have sent them to the playoffs. And I was just feeling like, man, this seems very familiar with the way he was playing against the Raiders this year.
Yep. So in this day and age in the NFL, Chris, missing 7 field goals in one season is a lot. Boswell has gone through seasons when he's made the Pro Bowl, missed 3, missed 4. Missing 4 field goals for Chris Boswell is kind of like an average. Like you said, he's been automatic. So, yeah, are we spoiled because he's been so good? Yeah, we are. But again, he's the second highest paid kicker in the league, and when you're making that kind of coin, you're expected to come through.
You are. And to your point, in his career, he has an 86.4 field goal percentage overall. The last 3 years, he was 90% or higher. In almost every year, he's been 80% or higher. 2016, he was 84%, but every other year he was 90+%. The 2 years where he's struggled and he's missed 7 kicks in both years so far, the 2018 season, when it was revealed afterwards that he was dealing with an injury, he was 13 of 20 that year, 65%. Now he's 15 of 22 for 68.2%. Maybe injury is the key. He's come back from it before, though, Ray. If I'm the Steelers, or if you're the Steelers, do you give him that chance to come back next year and be like, hey, we're going to keep you on the same contract. Let's just figure this out and you get healthy?
Yeah, I mean, if you remember what Kevin Colbert did in 2019 is they basically took his signing bonus away and said, the only way you're going to get this signing bonus is if you come to training camp and you prove that you're back to being the kicker that you once were. So I don't know if Omar Khan is going to have the same tact. I don't know, quite honestly, if the agent for Chris Boswell would want to do that again. Maybe they say, hey, we'll cut us and, we'll go kick somewhere else. So I don't know if it's going to come to that, but Chris Boswell, it's a big offseason for him. He's got to get right. A lot of years left on that contract. And again, when you make $5 million a year to kick balls in the NFL, you got to do your job, because there's a lot of kickers out there who are making league minimum. And if this goes on for very much longer, I'm not talking this year, but I'm talking in the next season, then Chris Boswell's not going to be around to enjoy making all that money that's on this contract.
Agreed. And just to put things in perspective, like coming into this season, Chris Boswell and Justin Tucker were on, and Justin Tucker still is, he's like the best kicker that ever lived, but both of them had better numbers than the best kickers that have, like, I think there's only one kicker in the Hall of Fame. Their numbers are better than that guy. Their numbers are better than Adam Vinatieri's. Like, if you have a kicker in mind, their numbers had been better than that. But I also think you're seeing it happen more across the board. I think whatever kicking camps or science that kickers have started to figure out, the Bengals kicker, there's so many more guys that are coming out and being automatic. It seemed like for years that, like, you were very lucky if you found a guy that was consistent. The average was just missing, kind of as much as Boswell has this year. Now it seems like every team, almost, I'd say 8 out of 10 teams in the NFL has a kicker that they can rely on to make, a 45-plus yard field goal.
Well, Jan Stenerud, I think, is still the only place
Yes.
kicker in the Hall of Fame. And if you go back and look at his percentages, you're like, why is this guy here? But, Chris, if you think about it, how many of those games did he play? Were they on grass?
Right.
How many games now are on artificial surfaces and or indoors? I mean, it's really kicker friendly right now when you could play the amount of games you do in domes and on the field turf and, some of these venues that are very warm weather types of cities. So there's a reason the percentages are higher. I give Boswell great credit. And Tucker, too. I mean, Tucker, probably a little bit better weather conditions, right, than what Chris faces. But, for Chris to do what he does in Pittsburgh, that's why he's the second highest paid kicker in the league. And, the Steelers have become used to him being money, and he's got to get back to that.
No, yeah, I agree with that. I also point that, there's also that natural growth that happens with sports where, like, the 70s Steelers, you can't pit them against today's NFL teams because guys are just that much faster now. Like it's just the science of how to train is different. And I think it's the same thing with kickers. Kickers today know so much more about kicking the football than they did back when Stenerud played. Like it's just it's a different level of preparation of all the they've been able to learn from all the greats that have come and gone and say like, hey, you know what? That's what this guy did. That's what this guy did. And I'll admit, as a guy who loves to study film and loves to talk about the things about the game, I know nothing about those little things that they do to make sure, other than it looked like he followed through, looked like they did the right thing there. All right, they made the kick. But I think that's also a part of it. It's different this time around. And, I think that'd be interesting to see, Chris Boswell, you got to give him the chance. He's only 31 years old. It's not like he's aging out of being a kicker. He could kick for another 9 years, I think, if he really wanted to. Just a matter of, is his injury, long standing and affecting his form, or, is it, or is this just another 1 year thing? Well, he'll get back next year, because 2018, there was talk about cutting him then. He went on to make 93.5% of his field goals, including making an important 50-plus yard field goal that year. Before we wrap up, your thoughts on Presley Harvin. Ray, I think that I was on board with the narrative that he needed some time to deal with what happened with last year, losing, I think it was his dad and his grandmother in such a quick span, and the mental capacity weighed on him all year long. But I felt like this year was his year to show he could be more consistent. There's times where he's had some really good moments, but right now he just looks like a second-year punter that can't consistently punt well.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders game was actually okay. I think he had 3 punts, averaged almost 47 yards, but overall in the big picture, it's just the inconsistency week to week, right? I mean, that's if you're going to be a team like the Steelers where you're going to rely on your defense and the offense is still a work in progress, you need your punter to be really good. You need that guy to be able to do the coffin corner kicks, to pin teams deep. So they have to go the long field on your defense. And when that's not happened, that's just another, strike against you. That's less margin for error when you're a team like the Steelers that's not perfectly built right now. You got certain things in place, but you need a little bit of help from your special teams, and you're not getting it right now. So, yeah, I mean, we thought this past offseason was big for Presley Harvin. I think it is again. I think what you will see is probably more serious training camp competition for him now. I think it'll actually bring in somebody that they think might be able to take his job, and hey, maybe under pressure, he might be able to step up and perform. But I think overall special teams, every facet of special teams this year has been somewhat disappointing, and it's led by the kicker, and a close second is the punter, Presley Harvin. Danny Smith, his units this year, I'm not saying it's Danny's fault, but his units this year largely have underperformed.
Yeah, and that's uncharacteristic because special teams has been such a reliable thing for the Steelers over the years, whether it was kicking, punting, or coverage. And they haven't given up a score this year, but the long return they gave up against the Colts was a little worrisome. They responded with a good week against the Falcons, but I'm right with you. This has been an underwhelming year for Steelers special teams, which is again uncharacteristic for Danny Smith. We'll see how that plays out the rest of the way. We got a lot more coming your way this week. The Steelers, Mike Tomlin's back at it on Tuesday. We'll have our guys on hand for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at the Steelers facility on Tuesday. So pay attention for all of that at post-gazette.com and all the coverage that we're bringing there. Also, stay tuned for everything going on with this podcast Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the North Shore Drive podcast. We'll be back Wednesday, and then we'll be back Friday previewing Steelers Ravens. As the Steelers, their playoff hopes are still alive. We'll talk more about that all this week goes along. Thanks again for checking out the North Shore Drive podcast. A belated Merry Christmas to everyone out there who celebrates, and happy holidays for everyone out there. We hope that you're enjoying special time with family. Back with you really soon right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down below in the description.